noise of the world behind. The first wave struck the boat before anyone had time to speak. It came over the bow like a hand out of the darkness, cold and sudden, filling the boards with the sound of thrown water. A lantern swung hard against its rope. Someone shouted. Someone else reached for the sail. Beneath them, the Sea of Galilee rose as though it had been sleeping all day and had awakened in anger. Yohanan, son of a fisherman, gripped the side of the boat until the wet wood cut into his palms. He had known storms since childhood. He had watched clouds gather over the eastern heights, had felt wind drop into the basin of the lake like an unseen beast descending from the hills. But this storm was different. It did not arrive with warning. It surrounded them all at once. Behind him, in the stern, Jesus was asleep. That was the part Yohanan could not understand. The boat groaned. The sail snapped like a torn garment. Men who had pulled nets through dark waters for years were suddenly calling to one another with voices sharpened by fear. And still the teacher slept, his head near a cushion, his body rising and falling with the violent motion of the sea. Another wave broke across the boat. Water rushed around their ankles. In that instant, every strong thought in Yohanan broke open. He was no longer a disciple. He was no longer brave. He was only a tired man in the dark, afraid that his life was about to disappear beneath the water while heaven remained silent. And from somewhere deep inside the fear, a question began to form. Does he not care? Only a few hours earlier, the evening had been quiet. The shore had glowed with the last warmth of the setting sun. Crowds had gathered so thickly beside the water that dust rose beneath their feet and hung in the golden air like smoke from an offering. Mothers had held children against their shoulders. Old men had leaned on staffs. Fishermen, merchants, widows, and laborers had stood close together, hungry for words that could touch the ache beneath their ordinary lives. Jesus had taught them from a boat, his voice carrying across the water with a calm that made even restless hearts listen. He spoke of seed falling on different kinds of ground, of hidden lamps, of the kingdom of God growing quietly like grain beneath the soil. His words were simple, yet they entered places inside people where simple words rarely reached. Yohanan had watched the faces along the shore. Some were confused, some were softened, some carried the guarded look of people afraid to hope too much. He knew that look well. He had seen it in men after a failed catch, in mothers after burying children, in his own reflection on mornings when labor felt endless and prayer felt unanswered. That day had been long. The sun had burned hot upon the water. The crowd had pressed close. The disciples had carried food, helped the sick draw near, answered questions, steadied the boat, watched the teacher give himself away to one hurting person after another. By evening, even their bones felt tired, and Jesus looked tired too. That was something people often forgot when they spoke of miracles. They remembered the blind eyes opened, the fever leaving, the demons silenced, the words of sky. But those who walked with him also saw his weariness. They saw the dust on his feet, the heaviness in his shoulders after long days, the quiet way he sometimes withdrew to pray before dawn. When he said, "Let us go across to the other side," the words sounded gentle, almost like an invitation to rest. Across the water lay darkness, open space, and a quieter shore. The crowds would fall behind them. The voices would fade. The evening wind would carry them forward. They would row into night, and perhaps, for a little while, no one would ask anything of them. So they took him just as he was, weary from teaching, and pushed away from the land. The people on the shore became shadows. The lamps of the villages began to appear, small points of gold against the darkening hills. The water touched the sides of the boat with a soft, patient rhythm. For a while, it seemed that peace itself had entered the vessel and sat among them. No one knew that the peace would soon be tested. No one knew that before the night was over, each man in that boat would meet not only the storm outside him, but the storm he had carried quietly within. And beneath the beauty of that evening, something deeply human was present. They had spent the day listening to Jesus speak of hidden growth, patient soil, and seeds that rise without the farmer knowing how. Yet they themselves did not know what was growing in them. They did not know that the words heard in sunlight would be tested in darkness, or that the kingdom he described would not remain an idea on the shore. It would enter their bodies through fear, through wet hands, through the surrender of men who could no longer save themselves. The disciples entered the boat with wet ropes, tired hands, and thoughts they did not speak aloud. Simon Peter climbed in first, broad-shouldered and restless, carrying the kind of strength that often hides its own fear. He knew the lake as a man knows the lines of his own palm. He had worked these waters since youth, rising before sunrise, mending nets in the dark, bargaining at market while the smell of fish clung to his tunic. Yet beneath his confidence lived a memory of many nights when the water gave nothing and a family still needed bread. Andrew followed him quietly, glancing back toward the shore, as though reluctant to leave the faces still standing there. James and John settled near the ropes, sons of Zebedee, men of thunder perhaps. But that evening their movements were slow with exhaustion. Matthew sat farther back, hands folded, his eyes searching the water as if the silence of the lake judged him less harshly than the memories of his old life. Others entered with them, each carrying something invisible. One carried the burden of not feeling worthy to be near the teacher. One carried the grief of leaving family behind. One carried questions about the kingdom Jesus spoke of, wondering whether peace would ever truly come to Israel, to the poor, to those whose prayers had become thin from waiting. Another carried the quiet shame of anger, because even after hearing Jesus speak of mercy, his own heart still hardened too easily toward those who had wronged him. People often imagine faith as something clean and whole, like a lamp burning steadily in a window. But the men who followed Jesus were not lamps without smoke. misunderstood. They longed for God and still wanted control. They believed, and yet their belief often trembled. Johanan knew this because his own heart trembled more than he admitted. He had followed Jesus because something in the teacher's voice had called to the place inside him that was tired of merely surviving. Yet following had not removed his questions. It had deepened them. Who was this man who touched lepers without fear? Who forgave sins with the ease of someone opening a door? Who spoke of God not as distant thunder above Sinai, but as a father who saw sparrows fall and knew the hidden needs of his children? Johanan wanted to trust him completely. But trust is easy on the shore when the sun is warm and the voice of God feels near. It is harder on the water when the familiar world begins to tilt beneath your feet. The boat moved away from the land. The oars dipped and rose. The last orange light faded from the western sky. Jesus lay down in the stern where a cushion had been placed, and within a short time his breathing slowed into sleep. The disciples lowered their voices. The night deepened around them, and each man, surrounded by darkness and water, sat close to his own unspoken weather. Perhaps this is why their story remains close to us. We also step into each day carrying unseen weather. A person may sit among family, work beside others, worship beside others, and still carry a private storm of doubt or weariness. We do not always know what sits in the boat with another soul. We see faces, roles, voices, habits. God sees the hidden wind before it rises. He knows the grief beneath composure, the longing beneath responsibility, and the fragile hope beneath a tired believer's silence. The Sea of Galilee was beautiful at night. Under calm skies, it seemed less like a sea and more like a dark mirror held in the hands of the hills. Stars trembled on its surface. The air smelled of reeds, wet stone, and distant fields cooling after the heat of day. From the shore, faint sounds drifted now and then. A dog barking in a village, a child crying briefly before being comforted, the last call of a worker guiding animals into shelter. Johanan loved the lake in such moments. It reminded him of childhood nights when his father would let him sit in the boat after the nets had been drawn in. His father would point to the stars and speak of Abraham, who had once looked upward and heard a promise greater than his own understanding. Then he would tell Johanan that a man must learn to read the water, but never imagine he could command it. The lake belongs to God, his father had said. We only borrow its surface. Those words returned to him as the boat drifted farther from shore. For a while, everything remained gentle. The hull creaked softly. A small breeze carried them eastward. The disciples spoke in low fragments, too tired for long conversation. Someone asked about the parable of the mustard seed. Someone else wondered what waited on the other side. Matthew whispered that the teacher must be exhausted, and no one disagreed. Jesus slept deeply. Johanan looked at him more than once. There was something strangely comforting about his sleep. teacher who had healed the sick and confronted the unclean had surrendered himself to ordinary rest. His face, softened by sleep, carried no worry. The wind moved through his hair. The boat rocked beneath him. He seemed held by a peace no wave could touch. At first, Johanan took strength from that. If Jesus slept, perhaps the night was safe. If he rested, perhaps they too could rest. But the lake was changing. The breeze shifted. The surface darkened in patches. Far away, beyond the eastern ridges, clouds gathered where moments before there had been only stars. The temperature dropped. Andrew lifted his head, sensing it first. Peter turned toward the hills. James reached for a rope without being asked. Fishermen know before others know. They feel warning in the skin. They hear it in the way water touches wood. The lake speaks in small signs before it raises its voice. Johanan listened. The soft rhythm along the hull had become uneven. A small wave slapped the side of the boat harder than before. Then another. The sail shifted sharply. The lantern flame bent sideways. No one said the word storm yet. Some fears remain unnamed at first, as though silence might keep them from becoming real. For many, peace is mistaken for the absence of trouble. But true peace is more mysterious. It is not merely a smooth lake or a soft evening wind. It is the presence of God before the storm, within the storm, and after the storm. The disciples did not yet understand that the sleeping Jesus was already revealing something. His rest was not ignorance. It was the deep confidence of the Son who lived completely held by the Father, unshaken by what frightened everyone else. The wind came down from the heights without mercy. It rushed through the dark valleys east of the lake, gathering speed between stone and scrub, then fell upon the water with a force that turned calm into confusion. One moment the boat rose gently. The next it plunged, twisted, and shuddered beneath them. Peter shouted for the sail to be lowered. James moved quickly, his hands sure despite the darkness. John crawled toward the mast. Andrew braced himself near the side, trying to keep balance as the boat tilted hard. Matthew clutched a wooden support, his face pale in the lantern light. The lake, which had reflected the stars only moments before, now broke them into trembling fragments. Water struck the boat again, higher this time. It spilled over the side, cold against their legs. The disciples began bailing with whatever they could find: jars, hands, baskets. The rhythm of calm rowing vanished. In its place came shouted commands, groaning wood, snapping rope, and the heavy crash of waves. Johanan's mind narrowed to simple things. Hold the side. Keep low. Do not let the rope go. Do not look too long at the water. He had seen storms before. He knew that panic could kill a man faster than wind. But knowledge did not quiet the terror rising in his chest. The boat felt too small. The darkness felt too wide. The distance to shore had become impossible. He could no longer see the village lamps. He could no longer tell where the sky ended and the sea began. And in the stern, Jesus slept. The sight unsettled him more than the waves. It seemed almost impossible. The storm shook the boat like a reed basket in a river, yet the teacher remained at rest. His cloak was damp. Spray touched his face. Still, he slept, not lightly, not nervously, but with the deep rest of a child in his father's house. Yohanan wanted that peace. He wanted it so badly that for a moment his fear became anger. How could anyone rest while others were fighting to stay alive? How could he sleep while Peter's voice cracked with urgency, while John's hands bled against the rope, while water climbed higher around their feet? Such questions are not always born from unbelief alone. Sometimes they are born from exhaustion, from the ache of feeling unseen, from the terrible loneliness of suffering beside someone who seems silent. Another wave crashed over them. The lantern went out. Darkness swallowed the boat. And in that darkness, the men who had followed Jesus across dusty roads and crowded villages discovered how quickly the heart can move from wonder to fear. The men did what skilled people do when crisis comes. They acted. They used what experience had taught them. They lowered, pulled, braced, shouted, and bailed. There is no shame in this. Faith does not despise human effort, but the night would teach them that effort has limits. A person may do everything he knows to do and still discover that the water continues to rise. That discovery can feel like failure, but sometimes it becomes the doorway through which prayer finally becomes honest. The storm outside them awakened older storms within. Peter remembered nights when he had returned with empty nets and tried to hide the worry from his wife's eyes. Andrew remembered the long silence after John the Baptist had been arrested, the sense that righteous men could be taken and heaven could appear still. James remembered his father's aging hands, strong once, now slower when mending nets. John remembered the first time he understood that even love cannot keep everyone safe. Matthew remembered faces from his tax booth. He saw again the resentment in the eyes of men from whom he had taken more than they could spare. He heard again the coins striking the table, the muttered curses, the loneliness of wealth gained at the cost of belonging. In the storm, his old guilt returned like water through cracks. Perhaps he thought in a flash of terror, this is what judgment feels like. Darkness, confusion, and nowhere to stand. Yohanan had his own memory. When he was a boy, a cousin had drowned during a sudden night squall. The men searched until dawn. They found the broken net first, then a sandal caught among reeds. His aunt had stood on the shore as the body was carried back, making a sound Yohanan had never forgotten. It was not like weeping. It was like the breaking of something that could not be repaired. For years, whenever storms rose on the lake, Yohanan heard that sound again. Now he heard it beneath the wind. He tried to pray, but prayer came in fragments. God of our fathers, save us. Lord, see us. take us. His mind moved from prayer to fear and back again, unable to rest in either. That is often how the human heart suffers. It is rarely afraid of only one thing. A storm comes, and with it arrive memories, regrets, unfinished griefs, old wounds, and questions buried under the work of ordinary days. We think we are afraid of the wind, but we are also afraid of abandonment. We think we are afraid of death, but we are also afraid that our lives have not mattered enough. We think we are afraid of losing control, but beneath that is the deeper terror that perhaps no one is holding us at all. The boat lurched violently. Johann fell hard against the side. Pain flashed through his shoulder. For a moment, his face was inches from the water inside the boat, and he saw the reflection of his own eyes in it, wide and frightened. He did not see a disciple. He saw a man who wanted to believe and could not make himself peaceful. He saw a man who had heard the kingdom of God compared to a seed growing secretly, but who wanted the kingdom to arrive now, with power enough to stop the wind. He saw a man who had followed Jesus onto the lake and now wondered whether following him could still lead to drowning. The thought terrified him, because the greatest fear in the storm was not only that Jesus might be unable to save them, it was that he might be able and yet remain asleep. In every age, people carry such hidden memories. A smell, a word, a season, a sound in the night can suddenly open a door to an older pain. Others may only see the present difficulty, but the heart feels many years at once. This is why compassion matters. We rarely know the full story behind another person's fear. Jesus knew. In the boat, he saw not only frightened disciples, but entire histories trembling inside them. Histories he had come to redeem with patience. The question rose first in silence. It moved from one man's heart to another, passing through fear before anyone dared to speak it. They had seen Jesus care. They had watched him touch the untouchable, welcome sinners, bless children, lift fever from a suffering body, and look into human faces with a mercy that made people feel known. Caring was not something they doubted on the shore, but the storm changed the shape of their confidence. Pain often does this. In calm hours, we remember what is true. In frightened hours, truth can feel far away, like a lamp seen through rain. The mind begins to ask questions the heart is ashamed to hold. If God is near, why does this still hurt? If he sees me, why is the night so long? If he loves me, why does he seem silent when the boat is filling? Peter crawled toward the stern first. His body was soaked. His hair clung to his face. His voice, usually strong enough to fill a room, had become raw with fear. Andrew followed close behind. James and John looked at one another, then turned from the ropes. Another wave struck, and for one terrible moment the boat seemed to vanish beneath the water before rising again. Jesus still slept. Johann moved with them, not because he knew what to do, safer than the rest of the boat, but Jesus was there, and fear had finally driven them to the one they did not yet fully understand. Peter reached him and placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "Teacher," he cried over the wind, "do you not care that we are perishing?" The words tore through the storm. They were not careful words. They were not polished prayer. They carried accusation, panic, need, and desperate love all tangled together. They were the words of men who had reached the end of skill, the end of courage, the end of themselves. And perhaps that is why they still speak so deeply to the human soul. Many people have prayed beautiful prayers, but many more have prayed like those disciples in the boat. Lord, do you not care? Do you not see this grief? Do you not hear what fear does inside me when no one else is watching? Do you not know how tired I am of pretending to be strong? Faith is not always a calm voice beneath a clean sky. Sometimes faith is a frightened cry in a boat nearly full of water. Sometimes faith is waking Jesus because every other hope has failed. Sometimes faith does not sound like certainty at all. It sounds like need. That cry has comforted many precisely because it is imperfect. It gives permission to the exhausted soul to come near, even when its language is broken. A prayer does not need to be free of confusion before Christ hears it. The disciples did not pass through layers of self-control before waking him. They came as they were, wet, desperate, and afraid. And in their rough question, there remained a seed of faith, because they still believed the sleeping teacher was the one to whom they must go. Jesus opened his eyes. For a moment, amid the roar of wind and wave, there was only that simple movement. His eyes opened, and the disciples felt something shift, though nothing outside had yet changed. The boat still pitched. Water still crashed over the sides. The sails still snapped loose in the black air. Yet the one who had slept now looked upon them. There was no panic in his face. That, too, unsettled them. They had expected urgency, perhaps alarm, perhaps the immediate struggle of another man waking into danger. But Jesus rose with a stillness deeper than the lake's violence. The storm had not entered him. The fear that ruled the boat did not rule his soul. Yohanan stared at him, breathing hard. In that instant, he saw something he could not name. It was not indifference. It was not distance. It was a peace so complete that the storm appeared, for the first time, smaller than the one standing in the stern. Jesus looked at the men first. He saw Peter's fear beneath his anger. He saw Andrew's helplessness, James's urgency, John's shaken trust, Matthew's old guilt rising like a ghost. He saw Yohanan gripping the wet wood, exhausted by more than weather. He saw them all, not merely as disciples failing a test, but as beloved men caught between what they had witnessed and what they had not yet learned to trust. Then he turned toward the sea. The wind tore at his garment. Spray struck his face. The boat climbed another wave and dropped hard into the trough. The disciples braced themselves, waiting. Jesus did not raise his voice as desperate men raised theirs. He spoke with authority, but the authority was not harsh. It was calm, exact, and absolute, like the first command of creation entering chaos. Peace, be still. The words moved into the night. They seemed too small for such a storm. Only 3 words against wind, darkness, water, and fear. Yet the words carried more weight than the waves. They crossed the surface of the lake. They entered the roar. They went beneath the water and above the wind, not as a request, but as a command from the one before whom creation itself listens. And then the wind stopped. Not slowly, not as storms usually spend themselves, with fading gusts and restless waves afterward. It stopped. The sail fell limp. The rope stilled. The air opened. The water, which had been climbing like a living thing against the boat, settled beneath them with a suddenness that made every man freeze. A great calm spread across the sea. It was not only quiet, it was holiness. There are moments when all of life seems to gather around one gaze. The disciples had cried out, and Jesus had opened his eyes. The storm was still present, yet they were no longer alone inside it. Often, before outward circumstances change, the first mercy is this: to know that the Lord has turned his face toward us. The waves may not fall instantly. The heart may still pound. But the soul begins to understand that it is seen, and being seen by him is never a small thing. No one spoke. After so much noise, the silence was almost unbearable. It filled the spaces where shouting had been. It rested on the wet boards, on the trembling hands, on the faces of men who could not yet understand what had happened. The boat drifted gently, surrounded by water smooth enough to hold the stars again. Yohanan heard his own breathing. He heard drops falling from the edge of his sleeve. He heard the soft creak of wood settling after strain. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps from another boat, came a faint voice calling across the water. Then even that faded, and the night became still. The disciples looked at the sea. Moments earlier, it had seemed ready to swallow them. Now it lay quiet beneath the word of Jesus, obedient as a child, soothed by a father's hand. The change was so complete that the storm almost felt like a dream. But their soaked clothing, bruised shoulders, and shaken hearts testified that it had been real. Peter lowered himself onto a bench, staring at the water. Andrew wiped his face slowly, as if only now remembering he had a body. James held the rope he no longer needed. John's eyes were fixed on Jesus. Matthew's lips moved without sound, perhaps in prayer, perhaps in wonder. Yohanan felt the fear inside him changing shape. The terror of drowning was gone, but another fear had come. A deeper fear. Not the fear of danger, but the fear of nearness to something holy. They had seen Jesus heal. They had heard him teach with authority. They had watched unclean spirits recognize him. But this was the sea. This was wind. This was the untamable world bending before his voice. And suddenly the question was no longer, does he care? The question became, who is he? That question entered the boat more powerfully than the storm had. It settled beside each man and would not leave. Yohanan looked at Jesus standing in the stern, wet with the same water that had soaked them, yet untouched in his peace. The teacher had not rebuked the sea with fear. He had not pleaded with the storm. He had simply commanded, and creation listened. The calm outside them was immediate. The calm inside them would take longer. For even after Jesus stills the waters around a person, the heart may continue trembling. The body remembers fear. The mind keeps searching for danger. The soul, rescued from drowning, must slowly learn how to breathe again. So the disciples sat in the silence, no longer fighting the storm, but being gently confronted by the peace that remained. The great calm did not erase what they had suffered. Their clothes remained wet. Their muscles shook. Their throats hurt from shouting. Peace does not always remove the evidence of the storm. Sometimes it rests gently upon it. The boards are still soaked, but the sea is quiet. The hands still tremble, but they are no longer grasping in panic. The past hour remains real, but it is no longer ruling the present. This is a mercy many wounded hearts learn slowly. Jesus turned from the sea to the disciples. His voice, when he spoke to them, did not carry the force with which he had addressed the wind. It was quieter now, close enough to enter the places in them that shouting could never reach. Why are you afraid? The question moved through the boat with tenderness and weight. He did not ask because he lacked understanding. He knew why men fear storms. He knew the strength of waves, the fragility of flesh, the way death can draw near without warning. He knew human weakness not from distance, but from dwelling among the weak. He had taken on hunger, weariness, grief, and tears. He was not mocking their fear. Yet he asked, because there are fears beneath fear that must be brought into light. Why are you afraid? Are you afraid only because the sea rose against you? Or because you believe you are alone when danger comes? Are you afraid only because the boat filled with water? Or because you think my silence means my absence? Are you afraid of death, or are you afraid that your life rests in hands you cannot control? Jesus looked at them one by one. Have you still no faith? The words were not a rejection. They were an invitation deeper than comfort. He was not telling them they should never feel fear. He was showing them that fear had revealed the smallness of their trust. They had brought him their panic, and he had answered with peace. Now he invited them to understand what had happened. Faith was not the belief that storms would never come. Faith was the trust that Jesus remained Lord even when storms did come. Faith was not pretending the boat was safe while water filled it. Faith was knowing that the sleeping Christ was not powerless, and that his rest test was not indifference. Yohanan lowered his eyes. He felt shame at the accusation in their cry. Do you not care? How quickly fear had judged the one who had shown only mercy. How quickly the heart, under pressure, can rewrite the goodness it has already seen. Yet Jesus did not leave them in shame. He had stilled the sea before questioning them. He had saved them before teaching them. He had answered their desperate cry, even though their words were tangled with doubt. That mercy pierced Yohanan more deeply than rebuke, because love that remains steady after being accused is the kind of love the soul never forgets. Questions from Jesus often heal by revealing. He asks Adam, "Where are you?" He asks the blind man, "What do you want me to do for you?" He asks the disciples, "Why are you afraid?" Such questions are not traps. They are invitations to stand truthfully before God. A soul cannot be comforted deeply while hiding from itself. Jesus' question opened a place where fear could be named, examined, and brought under the light of his presence rather than left to rule in darkness. There had been other boats on the lake that night. They were smaller shadows behind them, vessels that had followed when Jesus left the crowd. In the confusion of the storm, the disciples had forgotten them. Fear often narrows the world until a person sees only his own danger, his own boat, his own water rising at his feet. But in the great calm, voices began to drift across the lake. Men called to one another. Oars dipped cautiously. Someone wept with relief. Someone laughed once, then fell silent, overwhelmed by what he could not explain. Lanterns were lit again, small flames trembling in the still air. Yohanan turned and saw them, dark shapes resting on the quiet water. The storm had not touched only one boat. The peace had not touched only one boat either. This, too, mattered. Many people suffer in silence, believing their storm is private, that no one else knows what it is to feel overwhelmed in the night. They think their fear is proof that they are weaker than others. They imagine every other vessel moving calmly across the water, while theirs alone fills with waves. But the lake is wider than our own experience. There are always other boats in the dark, other hearts fighting water no one can see, other families holding together by frayed ropes, other souls asking whether God cares, other people who look steady from a distance, yet tremble when the wind rises. The disciples' deliverance became a mercy beyond themselves. The word Jesus spoke into the storm carried across the water to everyone caught in its reach. His peace traveled farther than their boat. His authority covered more than the men who had awakened him. One of the smaller boats drew nearer. An older fisherman lifted his lantern, his face pale and wet. He did not speak at first. He only looked at Jesus. Then slowly, with trembling hands, he bowed his head. No sermon was needed. The quiet lake preached. The stilled wind preached. The breath returning to frightened bodies preached. Yohanan watched that man bow and felt something soften in him. He had been so consumed by his own he had forgotten others were afraid too. Now, in the calm, he understood that mercy received is never meant to remain hidden. Peace given to one boat becomes witness to another. The men did not yet know how far this story would travel. They did not know that generations would carry it into hospital rooms, lonely bedrooms, prison cells, grieving houses, and sleepless nights. They only knew that a storm had come, Jesus had spoken, and the lake obeyed. But sometimes that is enough. Sometimes a life is changed forever by one remembered calm. Peace is never merely private when it comes from Christ. The stilling of one heart can become shelter for another. The testimony of one rescued life may become a lantern for someone still rowing through darkness. This does not mean suffering must be displayed loudly. It means that grace, when received, quietly enlarges us. We become more patient with other boats. We listen more gently to frightened voices. We remember that the calm we needed was given, not earned. The disciples were filled with great fear. It was not the panic of moments before. That fear had claws. It shouted. It grasped. It imagined death beneath every wave. This new fear was quieter, wider, and more reverent. It was the trembling that comes when a person realizes the Holy One has been nearer than he understood. They said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" No one answered quickly. How could they? The question reached beyond what their minds could hold. They knew the Psalms. They had sung of the Lord who rules the raging sea, who stills the roaring of the waves, who makes the storm a whisper. They had heard the stories of creation, of the waters divided, of Israel passing through the sea, of prophets who trusted the God of heaven and earth. But now a man they ate beside, walked beside, and watched grow tired beneath the sun had stood in a fishing boat and spoken to wind as though it were a servant. Johanan looked at his hands. Those hands had touched the sick. They had broken bread. They had rested in sleep moments ago. They were human hands, lined with labor, wet from lake water. Yet creation had obeyed the voice of the one who raised them. Who then is this? The question is still the turning point of every soul that encounters Jesus. At first, people may ask what he can teach them, how he can comfort them, whether he can help their circumstances. Those are honest questions. But eventually, beneath every need, another question rises. Who is he? Not merely to the crowd, not merely to history, not merely to religion. Who is he in the storm when everything I trusted begins to fail? The disciples did not yet possess all the words later generations would use. They did not yet understand the cross, the empty tomb, the breath of resurrection, the sending of the Spirit. On that night, they were still men in a wet boat, staring at still water. But wonder had entered them, and wonder is a doorway. It does not explain everything. It opens the soul to something greater than explanation. It allows a person to sit in holy silence without needing to control the mystery. Peter whispered the question again, almost to himself. Who then is this? The lake gave no answer except its calm. And perhaps, for that night, the calm was answer enough. To ask who Jesus is can be unsettling because the answer asks something of us. If he is only a teacher, we may admire him from the shore. If he is only a comforter, we may seek him when we hurt. But if wind and sea obey him, then our lives are not our own small kingdoms. Our fears, loyalties, ambitions, resentments, and hopes must all come under the question of his lordship. Wonder opens the door, but surrender must eventually walk through it. After the storm, they still had to cross the lake. That detail stayed with Yohanan. Jesus did not command them to turn back to the familiar shore. He did not say that because the storm had been frightening, the journey should be abandoned. The words spoken at evening remained, "Let us go across to the other side." So they gathered the wet ropes. They lifted the sail again. They bailed the remaining water from the boat. Their movements were slower now, not only from exhaustion, but from awe. The lake beneath them had become calm, yet each man handled the boat as though standing inside a sanctuary. The other side was not merely a place on a map. To many of them, it meant uncertainty. It meant unfamiliar people, unknown needs, places where their customs did not feel as strong, where the edges of their world widened beyond comfort. Jesus was always leading them beyond the small borders of what they understood, across the lake, toward the suffering, toward the unclean, toward people they might have avoided if left to themselves. Storms often rise between the known shore and the calling of God. Not every storm means you are going the wrong way. Sometimes the wind becomes violent precisely when the soul is being carried toward a deeper obedience. The presence of difficulty does not always mean absence of purpose. The disciples were in the storm because they had obeyed Jesus' word to cross. That thought humbled Yohanan. He had assumed danger meant something had gone wrong. Yet Jesus himself had led them into the boat. Jesus had been with them before the wind rose, during the storm, and after the calm. The crossing had never been outside his knowledge. The night air softened. The sail filled gently. The boat began moving again. As they crossed, no one returned to ordinary conversation. Their fear had not vanished into forgetfulness. It had become memory, and memory was becoming instruction. They had learned something no parable alone could teach them. Seed grows secretly. Lamps are not hidden. The kingdom begins small, and faith, they now knew, is tested in the place where human strength reaches its limit. Yohanan looked toward the eastern darkness. He did not know what waited there, but he knew now that the other side was not held by darkness alone. The one who commanded the sea was going there with them. Many people ask for peace by asking to return to the shore they already know. God, in his mercy, sometimes calms the water canceling the crossing. He does not always remove the calling that frightened us. Instead, he reveals himself within it. The disciples would learn that safety was not found in staying close to familiar lamps, but in remaining close to Jesus. Wherever he led, the deepest security was not geography. It was presence. Long after the wind had died, Johanan could not sleep. The others rested where they could, leaning against the sides of the boat, wrapped in damp cloaks, their bodies surrendered to exhaustion. Peter sat awake for a long time, then finally bowed his head. Matthew seemed to pray silently before closing his eyes. James and John took turns watching the sail. Jesus sat quietly in the stern. He did not sleep again immediately. He looked out over the lake, now calm beneath the stars, as though listening to the night after speaking peace into it. His face held no trace of irritation, no distance from the men who had cried out in fear. If anything, there was compassion there, and a patience so deep it made Johanan's chest ache. Johanan wanted to speak, but did not know how. What could he say? Forgive me for thinking you did not care. Forgive me for being afraid. Forgive me for following you and still not knowing who you are. Shame is a quiet storm. It does not roar like wind. It whispers after the danger is over. It tells a person that fear has made him unworthy, that questions have made him faithless, that weakness has exposed what God must surely despise. But Jesus looked at Johanan, and the shame lost some of its voice. You are weary, Jesus said softly. Johanan nodded. For a while, neither spoke. The boat moved gently. The stars seemed close enough to touch. A faint silver line appeared on the water ahead, perhaps moonlight, perhaps the first hint of the far shore. At last, Johanan whispered, I thought we were dying. Jesus did not deny it. He did not say the storm had been small. He did not shame him for naming the terror. He simply listened. And I thought, Johanan continued, his voice breaking, that because you were sleeping, you did not see us. The words hung between them. Jesus looked toward the water, then back at him. My Father sees in the night, he said. The answer was gentle, but it entered Johanan like light entering a closed room. He had wanted an explanation for every wave. Instead, Jesus gave him something deeper. The assurance that night does not blind God. The storm had not hidden them. The darkness had not erased them. The sleeping of Christ had not meant the sleeping of heaven. Johanan lowered his head. For the first time since the storm began, he wept quietly. Not from terror now, but from the relief of being seen. Some of the holiest conversations happen after the storm, when the world has grown quiet enough for the truth to surface. During danger, people often speak in cries. Afterward, they begin to confess. They tell God what fear made them think. They admit the wound beneath the question, and he, who already knew, receives the trembling confession not to condemn it, but to draw the person nearer. The night becomes not only a memory of rescue, but a place place of intimacy. The story of that night is not only for those who fear literal storms. It is for every person who has reached the end of his strength and felt ashamed of needing help. It is for the one who keeps working, smiling, answering, providing, and carrying what others do not see. It is for the soul that has become good at surviving, but has forgotten how to rest. The disciples were not strangers to hard labor. Their hands were rough. Their bodies knew strain. They had endured heat, hunger, uncertainty, and the misunderstanding of others. They were not delicate men afraid of discomfort, yet the storm brought them to their knees. This is important. Being overwhelmed does not mean a person is weak. Sometimes it means the storm is real. Sometimes it means the body, mind, and soul have carried too much for too long. The question is not whether fear comes. The question is where fear drives us. That night, fear drove the disciples to Jesus. Not elegantly, not calmly, not with perfect theology. They came with accusation in their voices and panic in their hands. But they came to him, and he answered. Many hearts need to hear this with tenderness. You do not need to bring Jesus a polished version of your fear. You do not need to wait until your voice is steady. You do not need to hide the question that hurts the most. The disciples cried, "Do you not care?" And the one they questioned still saved them. This does not make their fear the final word. Jesus loved them too much to leave them believing that panic was the only possible response to danger. He asked why they were afraid. He invited them into faith, but he did so after meeting them in mercy. There is a sacred order in that. Rescue, then teaching. Mercy, then maturity. Peace, then deeper trust. Yohanan would remember this whenever he felt tempted to despise his own weakness. He would remember that Jesus had not waited for strong faith before stilling the sea. He had spoken peace over men whose faith was trembling. Perhaps this is one reason the story has comforted so many through the centuries. Because it tells the tired soul that Christ is not frightened by our fright. He is not surprised by our trembling. He is not absent from the boat. And even when we cannot command our hearts to be calm, He can speak to the waters that rise against us. Rest is difficult for those who believe everything depends on them. The disciples knew how to work, but Jesus knew how to sleep. His sleep in the stern was not laziness, it was trust. Many weary hearts need to learn that rest is not betrayal of responsibility. It can be an act of faith. To rest is to confess that God remains God even when we stop striving, that the world is upheld by stronger hands than ours, and that we are beloved before we are useful. Morning approached slowly. The eastern sky began to pale. The black water turned grey, then silver. The hills on the far side emerged from darkness like shapes remembered from a dream. Birds called among reeds near the shore. The world, which had felt near its end during the storm, continued. beauty can seem almost unbelievable. The sound of water touching stone, the smell of wet rope, the warmth of breath in the chest, the simple fact that one is still alive. The disciples noticed these things as men newly returned from the edge. Yet inside them, silence remained. Not empty silence, but searching silence. Each man held the night differently. Peter replayed the command of Jesus again and again. Andrew pondered the question of faith. Matthew wondered why grace had found him at all. James and John sat close together, humbled by a power greater than thunder. Yohanan watched the first light on the water and felt the storm inside him slowly settle. He understood now that Jesus had calmed two seas. The first was Galilee. The second was the sea of fear within human hearts. The first obeyed immediately. The second would learn obedience over time. This is often the way of God's peace. It can enter in an instant, yet unfold through years. A person may be rescued from danger and still need healing from the fear danger left behind. A person may believe that Christ is Lord and still tremble when the wind rises again. Faith grows patiently, not by pretending the storm never happened, but by remembering who was present in it. Yohanan leaned over the side of the boat and touched the water. It was cool and smooth. He thought of his father's words, "The lake belongs to God. We only borrow its surface." Now those words meant more. His life belonged to God too. His breath, his calling, his unanswered questions, his memories, his fears, his future. He had imagined faith as holding tightly to the side of the boat. But perhaps faith was learning that even the boat itself was held. The sun rose a little higher. Its first gold touched Jesus' face, and Yohanan felt not certainty about everything, but a small and living trust. If another storm came, the one in the boat would still be Lord. This slow inner calming is not a lesser miracle. It is often the miracle by which a whole life is reshaped. A sudden rescue may save the body, but a lasting peace teaches the soul how to live differently. The disciples would need this peace again and again. So do we. We need more than a single quiet evening. We need the memory of Christ's voice woven into us, until even when fear returns, it finds a heart that has heard a greater sound. There are nights when a person lies awake beneath a roof, far from any lake, and still feels the boat filling with water. The storm may be grief. It may be anxiety. It may be guilt over choices that cannot be changed, or loneliness so deep that even familiar rooms feel foreign. It may be the pressure to provide, the fear of losing someone, the exhaustion of carrying responsibilities no one praises, the ache of wanting peace and not knowing where to find it. In such nights, the body may be still, but the soul is tossed. Thoughts rise like waves. What if this never changes? What if I fail? What if I am forgotten? What if God is silent because He is far away? The mind reaches for ropes, strategies, is too strong. The story of Jesus calming the storm comes gently into such darkness. It does not say there will be no wind. It does not shame the frightened. It does not pretend that faith makes human life painless. It gives us a boat, a storm, a sleeping Christ, a desperate cry, a holy command, and a calm so great that men could only whisper in wonder. And it asks us to bring our own storm into that boat, not to analyze it from a distance, but to feel the wet boards beneath our knees, to admit the fear, to name the question, to look toward the stern and see that Jesus is there, even when his stillness confuses us. Perhaps tonight the prayer is not long. Perhaps it is only this: Lord, I am afraid. Or this: Lord, I am tired. Or this: Lord, do you see me? Such prayers are not too small. They may be the beginning of peace, because the one who stood in the storm still speaks. He speaks through scripture remembered in the night, through the quiet comfort of the Spirit, through mercies that arrive softly, through the strange strength to breathe again. He may not answer every question as quickly as we wish. He may lead us across waters we would not have chosen, but he does not abandon the boat. And when his peace comes, it may begin like the first small clearing after thunder, a breath, a softened thought, a loosening of the hand, a sense, faint but real, that the night is not empty. The storm may still be remembered, but it is no longer the only voice. For the sleepless heart, the story offers more than information. It offers a place to rest the imagination. Instead of circling endlessly around worry, the mind may return to the boat. It may see Jesus there, close enough to touch, calm enough to trust, compassionate enough to hear even an imperfect cry. Sacred imagination can become prayer when it leads the soul toward truth. And the truth is this: the Lord is nearer in the night than fear allows us to feel. The words remained with the disciples long after they reached the shore. Peace, be still. They were words spoken to wind and water, yet each man carried them inward. Peter carried them into future failures and future courage. John carried them into love deep enough to stand near a cross. Matthew carried them into the long healing of a past transformed by mercy. Others carried them into roads, prisons, gatherings, and nights when obedience again placed them beyond comfort. Johanan carried them too. Whenever the lake darkened and the wind shifted, his body remembered fear. But another memory rose with it. Jesus standing in the boat, his voice calm, creation listening. The storm did not become imaginary. It became held within a greater truth. Peace, be still. Not every sea grew calm at once in the years that followed. The disciples would face opposition, confusion, grief, and eventually the terrible storm of seeing the one who commanded the waves nailed to a cross. There, too, it would seem for a time that heaven was silent. There, too, faith would be shaken. But the story of the lake had planted something in them. The one who slept in the boat was not careless. The one who died on the cross would not be defeated. The one who commanded the wind would also rise in victory over death itself. On the night of the storm, they did not yet understand all this. They only had the beginning of wonder. But God often gives the heart enough light for the next step, not the whole road at once. For the listener lying quietly now, perhaps the same words can become a shelter. Peace, be still. Let them rest not as a demand to feel instantly calm, but as a promise of who holds authority over the places you cannot master. Let them move slowly through anxious thoughts. Let them settle over memories that still tremble. Let them touch the hidden places where you have wondered whether Christ cares. He does care. He cared enough to enter the boat. He cared enough to wake at the cry of frightened men. He cared enough to teach them faith without casting them away. He cared enough to continue toward the cross, where the deepest storm of human sin and death would meet the greater depth of divine love. The lake became quiet because he spoke. The heart becomes quiet as it learns to trust the speaker. So breathe slowly. The night is not beyond him. The water is not beneath his authority. And the storm is not stronger than his peace. These words are not magic spoken to deny pain. They are the voice of the King who enters pain without being conquered by it. Peace, be still, may come to us as courage to endure, as forgiveness after shame, as patience in uncertainty, as sleep after long unrest, or as the quiet strength to take one more faithful step. The form of calm may differ, but its source remains the same. It comes from the one whom even the sea obeys. When the boat finally touched the far shore, the sound was gentle. Wood brushed against stone. A rope was thrown. The disciples stepped out one by one, their legs unsteady after the long night. The earth beneath their feet felt strange and solid. Behind them, the lake stretched wide and calm, shining beneath the new morning as though it had never roared. Jesus stepped from the boat last. He looked back across the water for a moment. Perhaps he saw more than waves. Perhaps he saw every future soul that would find itself in this story. The weary, the anxious, the ashamed, the lonely, the ones who had prayed with accusation because pain had made them desperate. Perhaps he saw you. The disciples did not leave the storm behind as men unchanged. They carried the memory with them, not as trauma alone, but as testimony. The place of fear had become a place of revelation. The night of helplessness had become a night of knowing Christ more deeply. The boat that had nearly sunk had become a small floating chapel where human fear met divine peace. Yohanan stepped onto the shore and looked down at his hands. They were bruised from gripping the wood. A small cut crossed his palm. He closed his fingers slowly, feeling the ache. Then he opened them again. For much of his life, he had believed safety meant holding tightly enough, holding the rope, holding the side, holding control. But that night, cannot be survived by grip alone. They are survived by the presence of Jesus. He turned toward the teacher. Jesus was already walking ahead toward whatever suffering waited on the other side. The disciples followed, quieter than before. The morning wind moved gently through the grass. Birds rose from the reeds. Light spread across the hills. The storm was over, but the peace remained. And this is the gift the story leaves with us. Not a promise that every night will be windless. Not a promise that every crossing will be easy, but a deeper promise that Christ is with his people in the boat, that his silence is not absence, that his rest is not indifference, and that his voice can still speak calm where fear has ruled. So let the image linger. A dark lake beneath the stars, a small boat carrying tired men, a sleeping savior, a desperate cry, a holy command, and then the great calm. Let that calm move gently into your own night. Let it rest over your thoughts like moonlight on quiet water. Let it remind you that you are seen even when afraid. You are held even when tired. You are not alone even when the wind rises. And when sleep comes, may it come like the stillness after his word. Peace. Be still. And perhaps the listener, nearing the end of this journey, can let go of the need to understand every wave. Some nights are explained only in eternity. Some fears lose their power, not because we solve them, but because we surrender them. The disciples did not leave the boat with a complete map of all mystery. They left with a memory of Jesus. That was enough for the next shore, enough for the next step, enough for the next time the wind began to rise. If this story brought peace to your heart tonight, you can continue your rest with another peaceful biblical story from our playlist. Subscribe and return whenever your soul needs stillness. Together, we can make this place grow into a quiet sanctuary for many restless hearts.